Welcome to the Idea Talks, where we discuss big ideas. The Idea Talks is a bi-weekly podcast with Josh Tice and other leaders on big ideas for life, leadership, and ministry. And I'm your co-host, Drew Planencia, and we are glad you're here. For more information on this podcast, visit ideanetwork.church.
Today, the big idea is how to raise the capital needed to not just survive, but to thrive as a church planter. We're going to hit it with Akeem Smith, church planter to Oakland, California. Hey man, this is the part of the episode where we're supposed to advertise my book.
All right.
So what do you think we should say?
I don't feel bad about it. It's not a shameless plug. It's literally your book. You've put a lot of work into it.
That's a good point. So you need to pick up a copy. And hey, here's the thing. If you buy a copy and you didn't like it,
right,
Drew said he'll pay for you to ship it back.
It's not what I said. At least an In-N-Out burger, I'll ship to them.
You'll ship them.
If it's on the East Coast, it'll be all spoiled, but it's fine. Hey, I'm in this book too.
You are. You're actually in this book. And I say some things that people don't know about you. It's going to be great. I tell some stories.
All right.
Are you?
Where can people find this book at?
Oh, that's right.
And what it's called.
Okay, so you can pick up this book.
Right.
It's called The Quest for Friendship.
The Quest for Friendship. Insert Gallant music here.
That really is what it is.
Right. It's happening right now as we speak.
The Idea Network publishing arm of our network has produced this awesome resource, and I really do appreciate it. It's exciting. It really is a discussion of friendship, and I want you to pick up a copy at ideanetwork.church in the shop tab. It's the very first resource at the very top. You can pick it up, and if you put in the promo code free shipping is yours.
All right.
Yeah.
There it is.
You'll do it now.
The Quest for Friendship. Welcome to this edition of the Idea Talks. We are super excited for today's episode. Today marks a very special day for us here at Idea Talks and the Idea Network. We are officially starting a weekly podcast cadence for the Idea Talks. Now, we've discussed this on prior episodes, but you'll still get every other episode where Josh and I sit down and either share ideas with each other or bring in a special guest to talk about a specific thing. But on the off weeks or the other odd weeks, we are going to actually bring you sessions from prior Idea Summits, Idea Days, Idea Nights, and bring you that content. We're super excited about bringing that to you, opening up the vault, so to speak, and letting you see behind the doors a little bit of what's actually going on in some of these sessions. Maybe you missed it at a conference that you recently visited. Today's episode is entitled How to Be a Fundraising, Gospel Preaching, Always Worried, Never Fearful Church Planner. And it's brought to you by Akeem Smith. This is from a session of our most recent Idea Summit in 2021 here in Las Vegas, Nevada. To tell you a little bit more about Akeem Smith, Akeem is the lead pastor and church planner of Storyline Church in Oakland, California. Akeem immigrated from Belize with his family at a young age and was reached and discipled through the ministry of Southern Hills Baptist Church as a teenager. He and his wife now lead Storyline Church in the Bay Area, and they're having a great time, and they're doing amazing work for the glory of God there in Oakland, California. Now, I want to tell you just a little bit about this session that you're going to listen to. He describes this session as how to raise capital needed to thrive, not just survive, and how to have relationships while church planning is not talked about much in Bible college. Even more how to deal with a pandemic as a church planner definitely wasn't talked about. So let's talk about it. And he definitely does that on this episode. One of my favorite quotes from this episode he talks about is you need more than one sticker on your NASCAR. I love that concept, and to explain more and more about it, you're going to have to listen to the entirety of this episode. Now, the way this goes, if you've never been to a session at Idea Day or Idea Summit, the first half of the session is really talking about the speaker and the main idea, and the second half of this session is all question and answer. So to get the most out of this episode, I really challenge you to stay and listen to the practical ideas that are shared in this Q&A session, not only from Akeem, but other people that are in the room. I think your heart will be blessed by it. Let's jump into the session now with Akeem.
All right, guys, let's get started. Hey, welcome to this training session. This is how to be a fundraising, gospel preaching, always worried, never fearful church planner. If you're wondering, Josh Tice did give me that title. It sounds a lot like him. Hey, just let's get something out of the way really quick. There are two reasons, based on my study and my research of church planning. And I've met with dozens and dozens. I feel like some of you, it's aspiring to plant a church. I've met with dozens of church planters that have been successful, that have failed. And from my research and my studies, there are particularly two reasons why most church plants fail. And when I say fail, I don't mean in numerical size, like they grow to 50 or 100 or 200, whatever your number fail is. But I'm talking about like 5 years after they've started, they're no longer in existence, right? Their doors are not open for their community. So there are two reasons why church plants fail, and it's a lack of money and a lack of team, which really boils down to under-resourced. You're not going to last long if you don't got a lot of money. And you're not going to thrive if you don't have a good team. We're not going to talk so much about team today, but we're going to talk about money. Obviously, when we kind of break down for the conversation, the discussion, that topic of team can come up and we can have that conversation. But as far as like my delivery, my content today, it won't be particularly about building a team. But we can talk about that for sure. And so on that note, I know for me, starting a church, I had more questions than anything. And so I'm going to leave a lot of time so that we can talk about that and have questions. At least that was my case. So a little bit of my story. So I'm from Las Vegas, and when I was about 17 years old, Fred Murray, who's one of the pastors here, knocked on my door, invited me to church. I said, no way. I slammed the door. He came back like a week or so later. I was like, this guy's back. Showed up to my basketball game. I was like, okay, he's stalking me. I got to go to church and get him off my back. So I went and attended, sat in the very back, preached the gospel, became a Christian, put my faith in Jesus, and from there it's just been history. And so that was my first time attending church. My family's not Christians, and it's been just an incredible journey. If you told me I would have planted a church when I became a Christian, I did not see that coming. That's a hard no. But I'm thankful for the journey that God's called me to. But here's one thing I do want to say too. I hope this is going to be encouraging to you, that when I became a Christian, like I said, I didn't know I was going to be a church planter. But in my journey of fundraising, I remember arriving to the Bay Area with a group of pastors, and we were praying over the city. These guys were from Atlanta, Dallas, Florida, another part of the Midwest, and they just went out with me. Another pastor from here in Las Vegas went out with me to pray over the city. And we prayed over Oakland, and they said, man, we've been praying for a church planter for 10 years to come to this city and plant a church in Jack London, downtown. And 10 years ago is when I became a Christian. And so let me say this to you, that if God calls you, he's got a plan way before he even stamped the blueprint on your heart. That's great. When he calls a church planter, he has it in your heart. When he calls someone to start something fresh and life-giving for a city that's going to be innovative, right? Come on, he has already made the plans and made a way for you to plant the church. Craig Gershell says it like this. He says, when it's not God's timing, there's nothing you can do to force it. But when it is, there's nothing you can do to stop it. And if it's your time, he's gonna make everything happen the way it's supposed to. So on that note, my takeaway for you today is twofold. Number one, to leave the session with a better understanding of how to be an effective fundraiser. And then number two, how to stay planted under pressure. Anybody experiencing some pressure right now in COVID? Before I go any further, anybody in here are aspiring to be church planters? Go ahead and raise your hand. That's you. Yeah? Okay. How many of you, you're literally in the thick of it right now? You're fundraising. Like that's where you're at. That's the journey. Okay. Good. How many of you are 18 to 24 months out from planting a church? Okay, good. That helps me to know where I'm at. So that's just my email, akeem@thisisstoryline.com. So if you want to reach out about any of the information that I shared today, please go ahead and reach out to me. I just spelled my first name because most people don't know how to spell that. So it's akeem@thisisstoryline.com. But let me say this. When it comes to fundraising, this is why I got you up here in a second, but there are 3 tiers of fundraising that I kind of discovered, okay? Maybe you have 2, maybe you're in the thick of it. You can share a little bit about your process as well. But there's kind of 3 tiers for fundraising. And I look at it kind of like this. You're amazing, okay? And this triangle here represents essentially those tiers. And at the bottom is, in my experience, okay, this might be different for you, but I'm just going to share my experience. At the bottom tier here is like friends and family that you can reach out to raise money. For me, in my case, I didn't have a lot of friends and family that were Christians, you know what I mean? So like that tier was kind of very shallow. It wasn't deep. It was minimum. And so I didn't have a lot of friends and family I could reach out to and say, hey, I'm planning a church. Hey, give me $100 a month, $3 a month, you know what I mean? Like, so I didn't have a lot of that, but maybe because you grew up in church, you have a broader pool that you can draw from, right? And so that's kind of the first tier, and that's just the reality. And the second here is local churches. These are churches that you can reach out to. Most of you are aware of this tier, right? You are networking right now. Maybe one of the reasons why you're here at Idea Day is because you're trying to build relationships, trying to meet pastors. And usually these guys giving from anywhere from about, in my experience, from $300 to like $500, right? $300 to $500 to give towards a new church planner or a missionary to start a church, so do a new work from scratch. That's the second tier, right? So first is like friends and family. Second is like local churches. The second tier, you kind of need these guys to plant a church. And then the third tier is what I call angel investors, right? And this triangle represents the amount of money. So at the bottom here, there's this triangle represents the percentage of people. So there's maybe, not a lot of percentage of people, right, that will give towards it, a good amount. But at the top here, there's very few of these guys called angel investors. It's a small group of them. But this triangle represents the amount of money they'll give. So you won't get a lot of money from your friends and family, you know what I mean? They'll give you like $30, $50 a month. These guys, $300, $500, like, you need them to plant a church, but you can't plant a church without these guys. You need this small percentage of people that are willing to give a lot of money towards your new work. You can't plant a church without angel investors, in my experience. You need these guys to plant a church, angel investors. And in my experience, these guys are given from $1,000 to $3,000 a month towards a church plant or missionary or a new work. And so is that kind of helpful to understand the framework of like when you're going after networks and relationships? Hey, you got to build what we're going to talk about here in just a moment, prospectus, your pitch around this idea of like, okay, who am I going after in regards to how I'm going to build this church, right? You need these local churches, but you can't plant a church without angel investors. They're going to give just a large amount of money. In some of the cases, thanks, dude. You're the man. Yeah. Give him a round of applause. In some cases, those angel investors are going to be ascending church. Churches plant churches. I can't stress that enough. If it wasn't for Southern Hills Baptist Church, we would not be the church that we are today. I just can't say, I can't stress that. Like, if you're a missionary or you're a church planner, you got to have a sending church behind you that's strong, that's going to help you plant a life-giving church in your city. Yes, based on my research, right, when it comes to fundraising, that's kind of the tier that kind of developed when I was thinking about who am I going to go after to raise money. And so for me, I try to raise as much money as possible in the front end. And when I say in the front end, I mean like in the front end of our church plant. And the reason why for us is because I wanted to give all my time when I get on the ground towards evangelism and leadership to build my team. So that I had to worry about traveling and, speaking engagements and have to leave my city that I'm trying to get planted my family in, planted my community in, planted my group in so that we can, build relationships. So I try to raise as much money in the front end as possible so that I can leverage that time for the sake of the gospel and building my team. And here's some things that helps me when it comes to, raising money and developing, number one, a prospectus. We can talk a little bit more about that in just a moment, but developing a prospectus. And then just be bold. Here's some bullet points. Be bold about fundraising. Never say no for anyone. Like, We can share some stories about that in a little bit, but never say no for anyone. No is not always forever. Okay, they might say no tomorrow, but if follow-up is in your court, okay, they can say yes 6 months from that no, or a year from that no. And then make a clear ask. A lot of guys don't make a clear ask. Okay, I'm going to be very blunt and say some things right now. I was in the church planners luncheon yesterday, and I was just hearing guys do pitches and their 2-minute talk of what God called them to do. And I got 2 people that I heard a clear ask from. You better believe it. I marked it down. I said, I came with money. I'm a church. I came with money. I'm gonna give my money away. And so I heard 2 guys with clear ask. I said, I'm going to them because they made a clear ask. And I'm gonna give my money to them. One of them is in this room. Okay, make a clear ask, and then develop a well-rounded pitch. When I say well-rounded pitch, I mean 30 seconds, 5 minutes, 20 minutes, 45 minutes. You got several pitches you can throw. Right? You're in an elevator. Come on, you got 30 seconds. You gotta let them know. I just did a 30-second pitch just now. I got out of the car. I saw this pastor that's new to Idea Day. He's from Florida. I give him my 30-second pitch because he's new to Idea Day. This is. Maybe you're gonna hear this term: blue water, red water, shark. It's a term in Silicon Valley, right? There's a lot of sharks in the water. It's red. There's a lot of blood, but it's blue water. Like, he hasn't had many church planners come up to him yet in Idea Day. So I wanted to make that 30-second pitch. And then this is important, maybe not for you, but for me, going to an elite cultural city like the Bay Area, I need more than 1 sticker on my NASCAR. Okay? And what I mean by that is I need multiple partnerships when it comes to a network. When it comes to a mission board. I'm not sure where you are when it comes to developing a mission board, but there's a mission board I'm with Send Network. Send Network has, sent us, along with this local church here, to plant a life-giving church storyline in Oakland in the Bay Area. And so that's something that I believe very strongly that you need at Send Network, especially going to a city like the one that I went to. They provide coaching, networking, just like ABWE. They provide resources, training, all these different things that are essential when it comes to helping a planter and their couple and their team kind of get situated in their city. And so for us, I need more than 1 sticker on my NASCAR. That's why I'm also planted with ABWE. I got NAM on my sticker, on my NASCAR. I got Idea Day Network on my NASCAR, right? Because if you're going to plant a church, you need more than 1 sticker on your NASCAR. And then this, lastly, on that bullet point, be patient. Be patient and wait for the bucket to tip over. Every kid knows that the greatest water parks to go to are the ones that have the bucket that's like filling up with water, right? And they're playing, and as the bucket's filling up with water, they're just waiting for it to get to the top. And every time it gets to the top, it's ding, 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 right? It's going to pour over. Every kid's going to run to the end of the bucket, wait for the bucket to tip over. That's a lot like fundraising. Like, you're going to invest your coins of relationships, of leadership, of phone calls, of networking, and it's just going to keep building and building. And you're like, man, where's the bucket tipping over? Just keep investing, and eventually the bucket's going to tip over, and it's going to tip over all at once. In my experience, why? Because you should know this, that every church, especially if they're established, they're going to start their budget around August, right? They decide whether or not they're going to take you on in August, and so usually around that time you get the phone call, hey. Man, you've been pouring into us, you've been investing, you've been giving us your time, and the bucket's going to tip over in August. But you got to invest into that bucket. You need to know that. So I hope that helps when it comes to being a more effective fundraiser. Again, we're going to have some question discussions here in a little bit that we can kind of unpack some of those things. Develop a real budget, okay? My goal for the Bay Area was $1.2 million. Now it's like 1.25, but 1.2 million to plant your church. I don't know what it is in your area, but for us in a city like San Francisco, the Bay Area, that's what we needed to plant this church. And then, secondly, staying planted under pressure. We can talk more about budget in just a little bit, but We're going to move on. Staying planted under pressure. Church planning is hard. It's really hard. It's one of the most emotionally leadership taxing things you ever go through. It's the hardest thing I've ever done, that's for sure. When you throw a pandemic in the mix, okay, it becomes nearly impossible. Okay, I heard one of my mentors said it like this: it's like flying a plane, but you're building it in the air. And that's what it feels like. I'm actually doing like a triathlon right now. Well, getting ready for a triathlon for next year around September. And right now I'm swimming, I'm biking, and I'm running. And that's what I felt COVID's been like. You know what I mean? Like, oh man, I'm swimming. Oh, no, I'm biking now. Oh, no, now I'm running. It's just constantly pivoting and changing. And that's what church planning is like. COVID just accelerated it, but you're constantly wearing so many different hats and you're pivoting every moment of like this new work because you're wearing so many different hats. So it's impossible, but except for the grace of God, you can plan a life-giving church, I believe, in your community and in your city. In the movie Moneyball, anybody ever seen Moneyball? Starring Brad Pitt? Okay, yes, back there. It's a phenomenal movie. I mean, one of the most emotionally sports movie I've ever watched. Okay, it's starring Brad Pitt, and he's playing the GM, Billy Beane, who's the Oakland A's manager. And at this specific time in history, baseball was based around just pure talent. Okay, but Billy Beane introduced this new way of recruiting and developing a team. Oakland A's had a low budget, right? And he basically developed this new way of statistical analysis. In other words, you don't have to win just on talent. Okay, there's other things variables that impact the game that you can win on. And so Billy Beane was that GM that kind of paved the way for statistical analysis when it comes to MLB. And at the end of his season, that particular year, he was called into the office of the Red Sox owner, and he said, man, what you're going through is tough. And he's getting a lot of criticism, feedback, negative responses from the league and from as well as the fans for his this new innovative way of doing baseball. And I'll never forget what the Red Sox owner says to Billy Beane. He says, the first one through the wall always gets bloody. The first one through the wall always, in other words, the first one, let's translate to church planning. The first one on the ground to pioneer a new work of God, a new wave of God, always gets bloody. And the one thing I learned about church planning is that it's about pain management. It's hard. It's about pain management. That's real. So here's the question for you. I want to encourage you to ask yourself and sit down with your wife or your girlfriend or your fiance with a cup of coffee, and ask this question: how much pain am I willing to go through? And when you answer the question, here's the good part. From there on, it's all about pain management. Right? You answer the question. Now just how do I manage this pain that I'm going to go through? Ask yourself that question, because there will be days and weeks and months and seasons where you get a text message, an email, and says, hey, Pastor, we're leaving the church. Hey, I can work from remote now. I'm taking my talents to South Beach. You know what I'm saying? Right? Before you can process that news, you'll get another email, another phone call and say, hey, you're talking too much about Black Lives Matter. Look, we're going to go to another church, right? Hey, you're going to get an email say, hey, the Regal Theater has closed indefinitely, nationally. Who does that? What? Right? Before you can process that news, another one's going to hit you, right? You're going to have a miscarriage in your home, right? Your kids are going to go through some things, and you have to go to the hospital. And it's going to be hard. You're going to manage that pain. One of my mentors says it like this. He says, ministry is an unending series of ungrieved losses. Before you can process the news, another one's hitting you. It's an unending series of ungrieved losses. So here is a super important question I got for you that when I heard it, I blew it off. But man, I'm telling you, this is so important. you're wearing so many different hats as leaders and as church planner and fundraising and building a team. You're a team leader, you're a director, you're a coach, you're everything, right? You're a pastor, you're a leader of your family. You got a lot of different roles. You're a leader in most of those different roles. So my question for you is this. What is the single most important thing you do as a leader? You don't have to answer out loud, but I want you to think about it. What is the single most important thing you do as a leader? For me, when I heard the question from stage from a pastor who was preaching for 25 years in Sacramento, his answer wasn't in my top 5. I was like, oh, easy. Leadership pipeline, corporate vision casting, corporate leadership, leading my family, fundraising, empowerment, my team. Look, it wasn't in my top 5. In fact, his answer wasn't even my top 10. You know what his answer was? His answer was this. The single most important thing you do as a leader is staying encouraged. It's keeping yourself encouraged. Why? Because everything you do come out of hope. You lead your family out of hope. You cast vision out of a fresh vision of hope, right? You have the energy to get up the next morning when you got to preach online, right? Out of hope. You lead your family. Come on, you fundraise because, hey, you come from a perspective like there's a life-giving, life-changing message of Jesus. And I know that the world needs this message of hope. And it's the hope of Christ, the hope of glory in you. And that's where you lead out of. You lead out of a hope. And the single most important you do as a leader is you got to keep yourself encouraged. So look, let me encourage you. Whatever you do, you better schedule time to keep yourself encouraged. If it takes not spending time with toxic people, then you better do it. You can't afford, okay, even if they tithe, okay, you can't afford to become the kind of person you will become by spending time with him. If it takes time to schedule to go to Mexico for a couple weeks, look, whatever you need to do, you do it to stay encouraged because you come back with fresh vision. You come back with fresh hope because that's how you're going to lead out of the message of hope, which is Christ in you, the hope of glory. Let's just break everything down. I got some more content, but we just need to stop and just have some conversations and questions when it comes to fundraising and staying encouraged and all these different things. So I'm going to open up the floor. Just a moment ago, before we began, I had you meet some people in the room, and hoping that kind of just, let conversation flow here in just a little bit. But let's just talk about church planning. Any questions do we have, either from the talk that was just given or anything about church planning? The floor is open. We got about 25 minutes to have conversation. So go ahead and shoot. And again, I'm not the only one in here. People have answers in here that I don't.
We talked about the angel investors.
Yeah.
How do you find those?
Yeah.
And then once you meet them, once you meet them, how do you connect without coming across like a suck up mooch?
Yeah.
Or are you just saying shamelessly mooch?
Angelinvestors.org.
How do you find those? That's where you go. Yeah. Yeah. That's actually a good idea. One of my strength finders is ideation. And that would actually I think that'd be a cool idea to develop something that allows planters and people that are going out to do something cool to have a pool of angel investors they can go to. They can have a hedge fund, which we'll talk about in just a second. Anyway, it's your question, how to find those people. That's a good question. A lot of it, one of my mentors says, which you know him, he says that ministry runs on the rails of relationships. You might say, I don't have those relationships. You better throw away your cards then and get new ones. No, you play out of cards, right? You have cards that's been dealt to you, right? You have cards that's been dealt to you. Look at those cards and try to build a relationship with those cards that eventually, look, you're one person away from the person that you need to plant a church. I said it in the beginning. When it's God's timing, there's nothing you can do to stop it. So that means that God has already put people in place for you to plant that church, for you to go overseas and give people the life-giving, life-changing message of Jesus. You're one relationship away from it. What's in your hand, and then operate out of that. That's how I understood it going forward. For us, it just so happened that I know that I wasn't able to plant a church in just the independent Baptist movement, right? I just knew it wasn't going to happen. And so I said, man, this is my cards. How do I draw more cards, okay? And so I started to build relationships with other people that were kind of loosely affiliated with other networks. And from there, my cards started to grow. And then from there, I started to invest into those relationships. And eventually, I got connected with other people, and the bucket started to tip over. So relationships runs on the ministry runs on the rails of relationship. And then your second question, which was when you do meet them. Here's the thing about that tier. The bottom two, you get to like tee around it, like, you know what I mean? Like you got to play lightly, tread lightly to some degree. But angel investors, they have money, and they want to give it away. And what they want is a clear ask. If they don't feel it, if they don't hear it, you're not gonna have the opportunity to receive the blessing. Angel investors, they want to give it away. There's in the Bay Area an organization called Transforming the Bay for Christ. And they essentially are a bunch of business leaders, entrepreneurs that are in tech, high income, high capacity leaders, and they're Christians. And, they also got a tax write-off. Come on, somebody. And they got money. They want to give it away. And they have a board of pastors kind of oversee some of them, how they manage those resources. And every year they kind of ask guys to apply and, submit an application. And we got one of those first year of Storyline last year. And they said, hey, invited us to apply for it. It's a strenuous process. We applied for their application. They came back with a $25,000 grant, matching grant. It was really just a grant. They said, hey, whatever you do, we're going to give it to you. But we're going to encourage you to multiply it. And so they said, here's a $25,000 grant. And so we multiplied it and we got $50,000 as a result of that. This year, they invited me in again. I got $40,000 this year. And now I'm trying to multiply it to 100. So if there's anybody in here that is looking for a church planner, you know what I'm saying? You know somebody that's interested, let them know. I'm looking for a matching grant. But anyway, so there's organizations like that exist. There's people like that exist. And God has given them the resources, okay? You said this to me a long time ago. I never forget it. The world has all the money we need to solve all the world's problems. And it wasn't by accident. God allowed it to happen, right? We live in a nation where we live in because I believe God allowed it to happen because there's resources out there because he owns a cattle on 1,000 hills and he wants to give away the money for the sake of the kingdom. We just got to find it. We got to search for it.
Hey, King, if I could just respond to one other thing you said about, so you don't come across like a mooch or whatever. Yeah. I think, I've worked with a number of high capacity guys in terms of giving. And I think, one, you want to invest in them, and that's what you're saying, the rails of relationship. Mm-hmm. And make a clear distinction of when you're investing in the relationship, hey, I want to get together, talk with you, and then when you're going to do an ask. Yeah. I don't think they like it when you say, hey, let's get together for this, and then you turn it into an ask. Exactly. So there's a time to invest in the relationship and a time to say, hey, I want to talk to you specifically about my ministry and how you might invest in it. I think that's really good. Yeah, that's really good. And that's what they also mean by like clear ask. Like when you text them or email, make sure it's like, hey, this is what I'm asking for. So they're coming to the table expecting something from that conversation. That's really good. Thanks for adding that in. Right here.
I'm a horrible example of clear ask for the church planning luncheon. You would know this because I sat down and my wife looked at me and she goes, I said, "What you think?" She gave me that wife look like, I said, "What do I do?" She goes, "No clear ask." And I'm like, "Yeah, I know. But I have 20 years of being a pastor, so I'm so used to hearing people. I judge everything like, because my job was, if I'm going to take you on or take you on, now I'm the one saying, I need you to take me on, you know? So in my mind, I get paranoid, like, am I a mooch, you know? But the reality is what he said is you have to be clear. You have to have a clear ask. And I'm going to tell, just to go along with what you were saying, what I've learned throughout the years, so I just feel old, but the reality is you need to be friends with as many people as you possibly can. Don't limit yourself. Befriend people, love people, be sincere. That opens so many doors because here's the facts. Everybody's an investor, just in different ways.
It's good.
Everybody, from your brother to your sister, your mom, your dad, aunts, uncles, and people that are just random old folks in the church. They want to help you if you love them. And then the third thing is don't limit yourself to circles. If you get wrapped up in a circle, it's a good thing you're here at Idea Day. There is no circles. So if you got a circle, where did you go to college? Nobody cares where you went to college. What matters is what are you doing for the kingdom? That's the people you want to be with. So don't limit yourself to circles because that allows yourself to branch out. Sin Church Network is through the Southern Baptist Convention. You're not worried about the Independent Baptist or whatever, and this, you know, what you basically not a denomination for y'all. So those are very important assets, you know. So those are really great opportunities for you, and it's helped me, and I'm sure it's definitely helped you.
Yeah, that's good.
I think the other thing, sorry.
Go ahead.
I think the other thing is to ask boldly. I work with a nonprofit ministry, and we've missed opportunities where they've given what we asked for, but then they came back to the table months later and they were
we
like,
could get more.
we had all of this to give, but it really didn't seem like you needed
Needed
it.
it.
And
So
like,
good,
oh, we so needed it.
Yeah.
So sometimes asking that big scary thing may be a no momentarily, but it could be the yes that you're missing.
Yeah, exactly.
That's what you said.
Exactly. Yeah, it's good.
Yeah. So you said you came with money to give.
Yeah.
And I was there yesterday because I didn't sign up in time.
Yeah.
But since you said you only gave to 2, will you take me on for support since we're friends?
I got you.
I need to get to India.
I got you.
I gotta get married later this year.
That's awesome.
I need your help.
Yeah, that's good. That's good. That's good. That's good. I got you. Let's talk afterwards. Let's talk afterwards. That's good. That's
I already
good.
have your numbers.
I know.
Yeah.
That's right. That's right. That's awesome. That's awesome. Accountability. In the back.
I was wondering if you could, just for fun, kind of role play. You said you talked to that pastor and you give 30 seconds.
Yeah.
Like, that's my thing. Like, we've got 10 years of ministry on the mission field. And how do you condense all of what you're trying, what you're doing, what you want to do? How do you condense that into 30 seconds?
Yeah. That's great. We're gonna do that in the last 5 minutes. Can we do that?
Oh, cool.
It's good though. Yeah.
Yeah,
Hey, make sure you keep an eye on that to keep me accountable at time.
that's good.
Yeah.
This is super helpful. I'm clarifying and adjusting some pitch strategies and all of that as you're talking. One of the things that I'm trying to navigate right now is how to discern in the moment which ask to make. Or is there a way to clarify the entirety of the ask? Because, we're trying to close the gap on the monthlies. We have a 3-month need. We've got a 7-month need. All of those I have projected. I know the numbers that we need. There's a clear plan, all of that. How do you discern in the moment which one is going to appeal to the heart of that specific giver, that specific church, how they're wired?
Yeah.
Or do you just kind of let it flow? Because a lot of times I'll make the mistake of I'm in the middle of a clear ask, and then I start on another one and I'm like, bro, just stick to this one right now. Does that make sense?
Expound a little bit more on the clear ask.
Yeah.
In far as of relationships.
Yeah, I'll just give we're trying to get from 9 to 12,000.
Okay.
a month.
Yes.
Trying to close the gap on that.
Yeah.
We're trying to raise $20,000 in the next 2 months for 2 different projects.
Yeah.
Trailer, video
Yeah.
equipment. Trying to raise another 50 to get ready for launch in September.
Yeah. So you're saying which to?
Yeah. Because I think those different ones appeal to different people.
A lot of that I would say is gut.
Yeah.
because it's likely that you know those people, or you've been referenced by those people, right? And so to some degree, like for instance, like a good example, church planter friend of mine in the Bay Area, Eden Church, his supporter, he had a supporter that was supporting him for 5 years, and that time has concluded. And he reached out to me, that supporter reached out to me and said, hey, what's your greatest need right now? At least I knew that conversation was coming because Daniel texted me and said he asked about you. And so I asked Daniel, hey, what was your relationship like with him? And so to that degree, I kind of knew the gut feeling of what to shoot for. Right. And at that time, we were actually going through a fundraising campaign. And so I said, hey, this is what we're going through right now, but this is what we need. And then I asked him to be a part of this specific need, which was essentially that initial fundraise. Because I knew that like a guy like him, he wants to get involved right there. And then eventually when budget time comes around, he'll partner with me. So sometimes it depends on the gut feeling of that relationship. So I hope that helps.
Yeah, relationships.
Yeah.
Go back to that.
Going along with what you said, really, like we're reaching out to businessmen, which is, there's a lot of money. Business people love to give, like you said, as long as it's clear. So but they're different though. They're like, we had an angel give like, what was that, 2 weeks ago? Yeah, there was a guy that came up to me, he was a business owner, and he said, what do you need? I said, I just randomly said, to fill in this gap, I need $20,000. That day, I got $20,000. That's shocking, but he's a businessman that already had plans to give. If I would have said 30, I wonder if he would have gave it. I don't know, but I wasn't bold. Just like at the luncheon. But the fact of the matter is, I think really when it comes to types of people, church people versus business people, even though they kind of blend, they want to know, like you said, we need tech and this and that. Business people love that. They say, I want to see what you need. I want it in writing. They're more likely to give to that. I only say that because the business owners I know said, when you get to that point, I want it written down what you need.
Yeah.
They're not as big as like, give me a one-time give like that particular guy that gave me 20 grand.
Yeah.
Yeah, if I could add just to his question, one quick thing. I think you're better off focusing on what is your one most important need. Taking into context the relationship and the gut, but generally you have one main thing that you know is your most important need, and you focus on that. And then they'll come back and ask, I think. I mean, it's happened for me in fundraising. They'll come back and say, well, can I do a one-time instead if you really want the monthly partner? Or can I partner? You know, they'll come back and ask for an alternative if they need to.
Right.
But I really think the more you can focus on, this is the thing I really need. And then you've got those other avenues you can turn to if you need to, because they want to give a different way.
Yeah. Good.
That's great. Thank you.
Prospectus. You guys know what that is? Anybody that doesn't know what a prospectus is, raise your hand. Okay. Prospectus is essentially a business plan, right? In it, it's literally like a magazine type. I should have brought yours that you gave me. You can pass it around for these guys to see, but essentially like your calling, right? Your plan for sustainability, your vision for your city and your church, and you're kind of putting all this together in this just magazine type that allows people to say, here's my 30-second pitch. Take a look at this. This is what we're about. This is our mission, our vision of the church. This is our story. This is our team. This is our calling. And this is our clear ask as far as like a budget that we have put in place. This is the demographics of our city. Let me know if you want to partner. I think that's helpful. I made the mistake of printing out I don't know about you. I did 1,000 of them or something, 1,500. I think that's too much. But at least have 100 of them that you could just you just hand out to those people that you know would need something like that. Yeah. Like what you just described. That business guy, he needs that.
Especially at a business luncheon fundraiser, you're gonna get, according to non-profits that I'm connected, just friends that raise money, and I've never done this myself, so I'm not gonna act like I know what I'm doing, but we plan to do one in March, and friends would say, if you do it right, like what he just said, which is very, very smart, he said you could get 50 to 100,000 sometimes in one night if you pack the house with big givers. But business owners, it depends. You'll have some that are millionaires that'll show up. It depends on your connections in the city you're in. And then you'll have some that are small business owners that say, I want to give a $1,000 or $2,000 gift. But they want clarity. And they want to know what they're getting to.
Yeah, one of the mistakes that I made in the front end of like fundraising was I kind of wanted to hide what I had, because I had this fear of like, maybe they'll see that I have too much, like I have enough, or you know, I have enough, or it was just this weird like insecurity that I had. So like, but what I discovered as I went through the process is that money gives to money. Like when people see you've got money, they want to give to that. It was so backwards. Like, you know what I mean? Like, because they say, oh, this guy's raised money. I remember singing in a coffee shop at Bad Owl Coffee 2 months before I was moving to the Bay Area, and a pastor I've never met before, but I've seen him online, walked into the coffee shop, and I said, that's Shane. That's Shane. I said, hey, I'm a church planner. I'm going to Bay Area. Actually, no, that's not what happened. He sat next to me. And I had a book I was reading by Andy Stanley about great communication, and I like slid it closer to the edge of my coffee table. And he kind of saw it, and he was like, he got up, he was like, that's a great book. I said, I've read it 5 times. I read it like 4 times. On my 5th time reading it now. I read it every year. But he was like, that's a great book. I was like, yes. Hey man, I'm a church planner going to the Bay Area. I leave in 2 months. Do you guys support any church plants? Turns out that he was already connected to a planter out there, Ali, who's a good friend of mine, planted a church in San Jose. And he said, hey, get in contact with me, email my secretary, and we'll talk. Literally never met the guy before. He gave me his email. I followed that same day, which is good. You want to keep follow-up in your court, because then you can slow down or you can speed up. Okay? And so like when he gave me an email, I've reached out to her. She got us connected. He sat down and gave me literally, it's in my head, the best advice I've ever got, like bullet points advice for a church planner. Conversation was about 40 minutes. The 3 things he shared with me, like it's stuck with me. One I'll share with you today. He said, there's no magic. When you go to a city or a different country, there's no magic. Like there's no like secret recipe you can put in and stir the pot, and then all of a sudden, like you got a harvest of people that are wanting Jesus. No, church planting is your life. You go and you be faithful, and you'll see the return when you be faithful. There's no magic. For me, when you get into church planting, like you think there's magic, because there's a lot of secret sauces out there of how you can like plant a church, and you gotta learn all those different ways, like different models of ARC and different denominations, all these different things that think they have the secret sauce, but it's your life. You go and you just be faithful, and we gotta give a return on it. But I walked away from that conversation, and he said, "Hey, here's $5,000 for your startup cost." And a year later, I reached out to him and said, "Hey, we launched the church. This is what it looks like. It's what God's doing. You want to consider being part of it again?" He said, "Hey, I want to give towards a matching grant." Like, that's just you got to keep following up in your court.
You're following up periodically.
Yeah.
How do you do that without sounding like you're nagging?
That's a good question. So in my conversation with Shane and several others, I would say, I have a supporter in Dallas that I just recently talked to. I said, "Hey, do you mind if I follow up with you in about 3 weeks?" I say, "Pastor, I know you're super busy and you got a lot going on, but do you mind if I follow up with you in 3 weeks? Or is there another time that's convenient for you?" So you make the ask of like, is 3 weeks okay? Or if he's like, no, how about 5 months? Or how about 2 months? There you go. You got clarity around it. And then you can reach out and put that in your calendar. So
That's really smart. One of the things that annoys me as a pastor and makes me have more clarity going into it as a church planner is, like, when we're putting together emails, I say, my wife, I'm like, that's a horrible email. We got to change it up. Pastors hate reading a lot. We just want to know, bam, 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 let's get to it.
Yeah.
And if you're sending me a lot of emails, that annoys pastors. It's like, okay, we get it, we're here. We have a secretary, we've made a note. Keep us in the loop. And when we're ready to make that move, and what you just said is so important, that 3 to 5 months, well, that's discouraging for somebody like a missionary church planner.
Yeah.
But for a pastor, their team, depending on the size of the church, they already got that in the calendar, we'll talk about that with the financial team. And when August does roll around, they do want potential people that can really invest, and they love that. But just, there is a fine line.
Yeah. If it's 5 months, you keep a track of that date. And as you're building your team, as you're leading your team, and you're building a brand and, getting a name out of the church in that community, likely that God's going to use what you're doing to make a difference. And if that's the case, every 2 months, every 3 months, you can follow up with that pastor and say, hey, I just want to let you know what God's doing. Don't make an ask. I'm just saying, hey, this is what God's doing in a storyline. Looking forward to talk to you in August. Looking forward to share more of an update, what's God doing. And then you just keeping him in the loop. So when the time comes, he's like, hey, I heard about, that's awesome. Tell me about it. He's ready, man. He's primed. He's ready to partner with you. But the most effective thing for raising money, in my experience, it's not for everybody, is a team. In my experience, they want to know, do you have people going with you that says, I've bought into this vision already, and we are putting our lives on the line, and we want to be a part of this vision to see something new start in this city. And then they will know that other people are giving to it. And so don't disclose that. Let that information out. Let them know that, we got our sending church that's behind us, and they've given, $2,000 a month, $3,000 a month towards this, whatever the cause is. Let them know what that is and say, we got a team that's behind the vision. And I think that will benefit in your play. At least it was for me in my case.
Yeah, that's a good point, Akeem. So we're working at one of the biggest donors that I know could give. He could write a check for whatever. And so our organization's approaching him in a couple months. And he's like one of my best friends as well. But we got buy-in from our corporate to give us, they had raised some money, to give us a large chunk of money so that we can leverage that and say, because I know one of the questions he's going to ask is, has the president bought in, the president of our mission? And we can now say, because he just told us this last week, he's bought, and it's a 6-digit number. He said, yes, he believes in this so much, he came to us and offered us this. And so what you're talking about there is really critical. There's a critical mass even in mission fundraising, because I'm a fully supported missionary.
Right.
Where, if you get stuck in that 40 to 60% range, you can get lost in the desert. And there's that people want to invest, what you said earlier, in a winner. They want to invest, and I don't mean that in a worldly sense.
Right.
But money follows money, is what you're saying. If you can demonstrate other people have bought in, that's hugely beneficial to your cause.
Yeah, that's good. It's good. That's really good. He's been doing it longer than all of us have. So,
Does that mean I'm old?
No, you're seasoned. You're seasoned. Man, I don't know about you guys. I can't wait till I get up till I'm 40.
You can't wait, what?
I can't wait till I'm 40.
Yeah, you can.
No, I can't wait till I'm 40 because I don't know. I feel like a teenager every time I get up to preach to my church. I'm just 17 years old. Like, I just can't wait till I'm 40 when I'm just.
How old are you?
Got some wisdom under my belt. I'm 29 now. 30s are great. That's what I hear. Yeah.
I was going to ask a question about that. Like, how do you overcome in your fundraising inherent weaknesses? So I'm 31. Most people think I'm 25.
Yeah.
So they're like, I don't know if I trust this guy just because he looks young.
Yeah.
I'm just recently, hoping to get married. And then there's personality differences. Some people just come across and they get the money. And then maybe you're more introverted, you're more thoughtful, so your pitch isn't as strong right off the bat. What do you have to help us learn how to overcome some of our inherent weaknesses?
That's really good, Micah. One of the things you mentioned that I still struggle with today is my youth. I feel like my vision is to build obviously I'm co-partnering with God, okay? A multi-ethnic, multi-generational, multi-site, multiplying church. That's our vision. And multi-generational, I'm 29. Every time I met with a supporter, some of them I'm thinking about right now, and some people that I was meeting with before we're getting ready to launch that were older generation, that were in our city, that were interested in the church, and they want to hear about Storyline, I felt so insecure of like, man, they're not going to listen to me. But it goes back to what I said, like, man, if God's going to start, if he put it in your heart there's nothing we can do to stop it. When we launched Storyline, we saw the first two of that vision come to reality, multi-ethnic and multi-generational. Because of COVID, it's now a multi-site, right? Online and in person. We're technically an online church with a physical location because we've been meeting longer online than we have been in person. And some of the insecurities is just praying and asking God, you called me to do this. You put this in my heart long before I was in existence. And I'm trusting that, God, you're going to pave the way when there is no way. When it doesn't look like it's possible, God, I'm going to trust you in this season, and I'm going to make the ask of what you're calling me to do. And just trust in that calling, which is the last thing I get to share. But what happens when you don't hit your goals? What happens when you don't hit your benchmarks? What happens when things are array? What do you go back to? For me, I'm type A. I'm driven. I want to see my goals. I live by my goals. Like if I don't see that accomplished in COVID, like today, this day, I have a specific goal where we're supposed to be as a church, as a team, and I haven't seen it come past because of COVID. What do you do? What do you go back to? When you wake up in the morning, you go back to your calling. That God called me to do this. I'll leave with this. Howard Hendricks says, discouragement is the anesthetic the devil uses on a person right before he reaches in and carves out their heart. I say that again. Howard Hendricks says, what do you say? Discouragement is the anesthetic the devil uses on a person right before he reaches in and carves out their heart. Stay encouraged and do whatever it takes to stay encouraged. I love church planners. I have a huge heart for you. I'm a church planner. We're just a year in our church plant, and I'm still believing that God has the best ahead for church planners because the hope of our city, the hope of our world is in missionaries, is in church planning, and I'm praying for you guys. If there's anything I can do, please reach out. Love you guys. Let's pray. God, we're so grateful for what you're doing in our hearts and our families. We're thankful for all of it, the good and the losses, the wins and the negatives. God, I pray that you'd use it for your glory and for your honor. I pray for these guys and women as they're raising money and supporting one another as they're doing that. I pray, God, that you provide abundantly above what they need, not just to survive, but to thrive in their city. But God, I pray that you give them a vision bigger from what that they have, that it would be impossible for them to accomplish without your divine hand and activity in their life. And so, God, I pray that you'd use this in a tremendous way. Be with them next couple of days. I pray this in Jesus' name. Amen.
Thanks so much for listening to today's Idea Talks. If you would like to reach out to us, drop us an email at joshtice@ideanetwork.church. If you benefited from this podcast, we ask that you take a moment to show your support by subscribing, rating, and reviewing the podcast on iTunes. Thanks again for joining us, and we will see you right here again at the Idea Talks podcast.